and say welcome to everyone, and welcome particularly to James Martin, who tonight is going to don the hat of during the day he's actually chief executive of charity, and in night he's actually the Love King, because he's the DJ. Is a radio DJ, late night love songs, I think, or something. Is that right, James? I leave you to actually explain more of that. So welcome to our Confessions of a Radio host, James Martin. Over to you, James.
Thanks, Martin. I'm just going to try and share this, I think, if that works.
Wow.
Are you seeing that?
Yeah. Thank you.
No, that's fine. That's great. Okay, so confession of a radio presenter. I wasn't quite sure what to put in here, but and before we say it, we'll get it out the way that yes, I have a face for radio. We'll just get that out the way straight from the word go. The station that I started volunteering at was based in a place called Alness, which is it's about half an hour from Inverness, in the beautiful north of Scotland. And it was originally called ABC Radio, Alness Broadcasting Community, and was set up by a group of volunteers that had tried to get a community radio station going, and I know other people have been involved in community radio stations, but I hadn't had any great involvement in it at all up until the point of popping along to the station for a look. So how I became involved was as Martin says, I'm chief executive of a leisure charity through the to the on one of the sport shows. For someone that works in sport and leisure, I know nothing about football, and the whole show was football, so I had to use all my skills of communication to try and get through a football show and sound as if I knew what I was talking about. Regardless of that, I got to the end of the show, and many years ago I had been involved in hospital radio in Ayrshire when I stayed in the central belt of Scotland. And they say that once you get the broadcasting bug, it doesn't kind of leave you back in the studio. I really enjoyed it and phoned the chap up to say, look, if you're ever looking for any cover, because just as my first pitch for community radio, if anyone's interested in community radio, and there are community radio stations around about you, generally they are always looking for support, volunteers, help, anything that they can get. So I made, I suppose, the error of saying if they were ever looking for cover, then give me a shout. I would need some training, but they could give me a shout. Needless to say, within a week, I had my own show on a Thursday night, and the rest, as I say, is history. So ABC Radio closed in October. I think it was run by a group of volunteers. It closed in October 2013, and a full new management team with a new approach on things opened up North Highland Radio in January 2014. And I'll kind of go into that in a bit more detail in relation to how we got there. But when the station was originally set up, there was no plan or structure in place. The voluntary group that had been set up, the treasurer, and these are issues that you find in lots of voluntary organisations, but the treasurer had no financial experience. When some of us started talking to him about creating a budget, he didn't know how to do that, or what a profit and loss account was, anything like that. There was no leadership or management structure in the station. But we also had issues whereby when we set up North Highland Radio, or took over or started running North Highland Radio from ABC, because the previous volunteers hadn't had much experience, there were a number of contracts, and we're actually still in contracts at the moment, which had been set up, and we had to honour those contracts. There was missing equipment, and volunteers were kind of all over the shop, and there was no structure effectively. The other issue as well is that it costs about £15,000 a year to run the station, with all the licences, etc., that are involved. And for that, we obviously need contractors and advertisers and donors as well. And I think, as it says there at the bottom of the slide, ABC Radio had become a toxic little station. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. It had become very unprofessional. It wasn't great. The output wasn't brilliant either, and therefore contractors and advertisers had completely disengaged with it. Even down to the basics of the music library that there was no control in it. There was nothing. You would be looking for stuff and it wasn't there. So we had to get things really sorted out. So when we took over North Highland Radio in January 2014, it's purely internet-based at the moment, and I'll explain why that is in a second, but it's purely internet-based. So you can log in online and you can listen in anywhere in the world, which is great, because it's all over the place, and even people from England listening as well, which is quite novel. So we went from 1,000 logins approximately to, this is slightly out of date, but we're probably sitting somewhere in the region of about 10,000 listeners per month, which for a community station is very, very good for where we are. And because it's internet, we can really monitor that. We can know where they're coming from, where they're logging in from, where the listeners are coming. As a result of this has started to bring in new sponsors. I said earlier on that we'd brought in a kind of more business approach team. So we're all kind of, I guess, senior managers in our own day jobs. So we're kind of, there's no egos, but we're all running it as a business effectively. So we brought in new sponsors and commercial donations, a number of new volunteers. We've even signed up, as I know some Rotary clubs have, to the Chamber as well. And our first big event was to raise £2,000 for Maggie's, a local cancer care charity here. Big, massive broadcast in January 2015, which went out. But the big things that we had was robust planning, robust strategy in place, etc. And we started making applications for funding to try and bring the costs of running the station down, because, as I say, people don't realise the licences. Even though it's a community voluntary station, the public PPL licenses all to be for artists and for the music, etc. We also, I guess, kind of through myself, but I wasn't involved in the deal, was that we now broadcast to the largest leisure centre in the Highlands. So for an advertising point of view, that leisure centre has a footfall of around about 1 million people per year. So we're able to say to advertisers that there is a play out to 1 million people over the course of the year. And we created our own e-magazine as well. So all very trying to take things forward as best we could. So the way forward that we've got now is that we are creating what we call a SKIO. Now, some of you won't know what a SKIO is, but this is Scottish Government have created these as a charitable incorporated organisation. It's a kind of stage beyond a charity, effectively, but it protects all the trustees, kind of like a company limited by guarantee. But the charity is the entity, effectively, not the trustee. So, in fact, the charity enters in contracts, the charity enters into any deals and negotiations. The charity is the employer, not the trustee, or not the chairperson or anything. So we're in the process of that. We're expecting any day now to hear that's gone through. The indication that we've got is that will happen. So that will then open up substantially more funding to us as well. New board of shadow trustees at the moment. They are shadow trustees until the SKIO is approved. Full new operational and business plan in place, which all sounds very grandiose for a small radio station, but we'd made so many errors in the first part before the rest of us had become involved as committee members, because at the start of ABC, I and others were only just presenters, effectively. The really interesting one was that we were one of the first to receive funding from the Plastic Bag Fund, and in Scotland, since last year or earlier on this year, there's been a charge for plastic bags and any carrier bags, actually, paper plastic bags, bag at all, as a minimum charge of 5p. And the bigger supermarkets have decided that they will be donated to charity. So we actually have a pledge. Once the SKIO comes through, we have a pledge of, wait for this, £33,000 from ASDA from their plastic bag fund. So that will really see us through in relation to new equipment and taking us forward to the next stage. So we were trying to head for, getting ready for FM and DAB status. That will effectively, for a community station, that will start to double the operating costs. There are a couple of community DAB licenses that are being thrown around and checked to see whether they can be picked up upon. We're not quite there yet. We're not quite ready for that to come forward, but we are in the process. Ofcom only have a cycle of licenses to give out, so Scotland isn't in that cycle yet. I think it's about another 2 years before they release more community licenses, so we've got to kind of wait on that unless we can get a special dispensation for that. The new edition of the second studio, so that we can pre-record shows while there's shows going out on air that we can't do at the moment. Obviously, to increase our advertising and sponsorship. We're looking to relocate to a place called Dingwall, which is the second biggest town in the Highlands. So we'll pull in more advertisers there. We'll pull in more volunteers as well, and eventually employ a state as well for running the operation. Just as some interesting statistics here, I was saying there about earlier on that we are an internet. 22% of adults are now listening to radio on a device. Now, by a device, that means not a radio. So that's either via their phone or via their tablet. That increases to nearly, doubles effectively for the 16 to 25-year-old age group. They're listening to radio on their phone. And that for adults is a 38% increase year on year this time last year. These are January figures for 2015, so it's probably increasing there. That equates to about 6 to 8 million hours of online listening. So the fact is that the TuneIn radio app that I've put the logo up for there means that you can listen on your device to any community radio. You can listen to Radio 2, Radio 1, whatever you want to listen to, Classic FM. It's all on there no matter where you are in the world. So the sale of standard radios is apparently dropping as more and more people are seeing that they can listen to radio on their phone just by plugging it into their car or plugging it into any of the speakers, etc. at home. So as Martin says, just as a quick shameless plug, my shows, Late Night Love on a Tuesday night, 10 till midnight. That's some classic love songs, for all the slushy romantics out there that takes you into the wee small hours of Wednesday morning. And Cracking Tunes, which is on tomorrow night, 8 till 10 is the other one. That was my original show. And that's just a bit of mixed. If people ask me, I shouldn't really say this, but if people ask me, it's a very kind of Radio 2 type show. That's really what kind of show it is, effectively. The same kind of music, middle of the road types of music, the types of stuff you would get on Radio 2. The final pledge, and I know that Alan's been involved in community radio before, and I know others have as well. It's really important, community radio. A good chance for people to get to know what's happening in the local community. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but certainly in Scotland, the big boys are buying out, have spent the last 10 years buying out local community radio. And as a result, you now have basically a national independent radio service run by Bauer Media, who have kind of bought up so many of the local stations. So your local station isn't really local anymore. So this is where community radio comes into it. So if you do have a community radio station, then go speak to them, because the chances are they'll be looking for presenters, or they'll be looking for people to pick up shows. And there are a couple of, just bringing the Rotary side of things in, I know there are a couple of community stations that actually have Rotary hours, and I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's one that it's 4 Rotarians who go in and they play music and they do a kind of radio show as they would, but there's a Rotary slant on it, and between them they just take a week every 4 weeks and go in and talk about shelter box and Rotary stuff and all the kind of stuff that people would listen into, throwing it in with some good music. So there is an opportunity there. so that's basically it. That's a quick sojourn through North Highland Radio, and just remember, tomorrow night, 8 till 10. I need my figures up. I'm only the second. I'm only the second most listened to show in the station, so I need to get up to the first one. So who knows? Happy to take any questions, Martin.
Okay. Well, 8 to 10 is better than the midnight one, put it that way. I think
yeah,
that's the thing. And any questions then? We'll open up the floor to ask questions. Anyone with a question? Andy? I'll come to you, Dorothy, in a sec.
Okay, cheers.
James, I thought it was really interesting. I don't know anything about community radio, so it's kind of interesting to hear about it. When you broadcast, do you have to go to the studio to broadcast, or can you do that from home?
I actually go. I go to the studio. I find it easier to go to the studio, but there's now there are a number of stations now because the internet and the packages are so easy to use. There are quite a few. There's a massive country music radio station from Northern Ireland which doesn't have a studio at all, and basically presenters are pretty much doing what we're doing tonight. Is they're logging in from their own home, presenting the radio show from their own home. But we have the studio. I think it easier. It's a quality output as well. I still along there and for a couple of hours. So that's 4 hours a week I'm along there as well. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay, Dorothy, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out from James what made him get into this in the first place. I spent 8 years with hospital radio broadcasting and had great fun. So I'd like James to tell me what made him go into this in the first place.
I same as yourself, Dorothy. Basically, I was involved in hospital radio many years ago as probably in my late teens as a volunteer, and when I went back in for this interview, I just kind of remembered how much fun, exactly as you say it was. There's a great bunch of people. You're speaking to people, even though as a community station, you're only broadcasting to maybe a couple of hundred people, and at one time it's not the big national figures that you're getting, but just to have someone say that they listen to the show or get their interaction from an email for request, and it's a good bunch of good people. And I think the other issue as well is you start to build up your regular listeners, and it's trying to pick out things and to know things about your listeners. As I tell you, I've got a listener from Georgia in the States. I've no idea who she is. I actually emailed her to ask her where did she find out about the state. She had been to Scotland on holiday, decided one day randomly to search Scottish Highland Radio. North Highland Radio came up. It just so happened that it was my show that was on. And she's been with me every Thursday. Now, she listens in her office from 3 till 5 every day over in the States. And it's those kind of things that you start to get. So it's just, as you say, it's just really good fun and a good crack, as they say.
Okay. I've got a question from David. I think because his microphone's playing up, he's actually done it through the chat line. And he said, are there any plans to go on to normal airtime?
Normal airtime, I'm getting as in FM status and output, I guess, we'll be trying to push forward with that as soon as we can. Once we get the licensing and taking that forward. So yeah, it's always that's the big ambition, is to get onto DAB and FM. And for me, if it means to go on to daytime, then no. The real job is the real job at the moment, effectively. But not to go 8 till 10 is fine. I do cover the Saturday morning show every fortnight as well. I go into that. For the time being, that's only a fill-in slot. Once we get a presenter to pick that up, then it'll be picked up as well. So that's a classic example. We've got about 40 volunteers, but even with the 40 volunteers, trying to fill 24 hours of output broadcast is huge. So that is a community station there. Then go and speak to them. I'm sure they'll be delighted to have you.
David, sorry, who spoke?
Oh, sorry.
Go on, Brian.
I just asked, are you 24 hours?
Yeah. We have an output of our objective is to have live output. By live output, that's presenters literally going out live from 6 p.m. at night till midnight on Friday. As much from 9 a.m. till midnight Saturday, Sunday. So I think Sunday is now full. Saturday, there's a few hours here and there left on Saturday. Monday to Friday, I think we've got 1 or 2 hours left of live output available there. Daytime is the really challenging time to get things. And then what we do is, as of midnight till 6 a.m., we just go on to what they call shuffler, which is the system just picks up music from the radio library. The sponsors, so they're getting their play out throughout the night as well. So there is, ironically, some nights, shouldn't really say this, but some nights our shuffler gets more listeners than some of our presenters. But we won't go in there.
And Andy, you got another question.
Yeah, James, I wondered if you could confirm or deny the rumours that you are lining up to take over from Chris Evans on the Breakfast Show when he moves to Top Gear.
I couldn't possibly comment on that. You would have to speak to my agent.
I take that as a confirmation.
Well, he's certainly not going to join him on the car show, because that's a woman, isn't it? So, mind you.
Well, you know,
you never know.
You never know.
David makes the comment that regarding Lady in America, that don't let her boss know as soon as it's late afternoon. So, and any other questions from anyone? Helen.
Yeah, can I ask a question about the demographic of the presenters? Is there a sort of, you were saying that obviously you're all involved in business, but is there a good range between different ages and backgrounds, or?
Yeah, we actually made the national papers because we put out a press release. Our youngest presenter is 9 years old. She presents from...
Sorry, how old, James, again?
9 years old.
Nine.
So she comes in for an hour on a Sunday night from 6 till 7, prior to her dad coming on from 7 till 8. Poppy puts out her party mix. So we go from 9 years old, and I think our oldest presenter has been 50 years in community broadcasting. So he's 70, he's just turned. So it comes right the way through. Ironically, believe it or not, the demographic that we're really missing is the kind of late teen, early 20s market. We don't have many presenters that are in that age bracket, but sort of late 20s, right the way through. And as I say, we've got Poppy. We did have a really good 16-year-old presenter. He actually won the BT Sports Reporter of the Year, and when he was with us, that was another good one to get with us. But yeah, the demographic right the way through slowly of everything. And also the demographic of the radio station in relation to the show genres as well is everything from classical to rock. Charles Fletcher actually is a Rotarian from South Queensferry Club, and he is a political journalist as well. So he presents the political show on a Sunday morning for us. So there's everything from politics, chat shows, business shows, right the way through to late night love shows from 10 till midnight on a Tuesday.
Any more questions from anyone? I've got one actually, James, if I may. You mentioned that you got trained to be a presenter. Can you just outline what the training involves?
Well, we do training. We've got a number of presenters who earlier on I was saying about the whole change of commercial radio by the buyout from the big guys. And so what we actually have is we have a number of presenters who have had many years' experience in broadcasting, so they will train people. My training really, honest about it, was through hospital radio, was just kind of picking things up. But really, is the issue of, to put it in perspective, when I was leaving hospital radio, they were just installing their first CD players. So that'll show you how long ago it was. They were just getting rid of their turntables to put CD players, and that was state of the art at the time. So now it's all MP3. It's all done on the computer. So it's really easy. The difficult thing people find is actually the continuity, the talking in between the tracks and knowing what it is. I would love to sit here and say that I spend hours preparing my show for tomorrow night, but it's 8 o'clock. I'm on in 24 hours tomorrow night, and I've no idea what I'm doing tomorrow night. I will work it out when I go into the studio at 8 o'clock tomorrow night and pull it through and pick up whatever news is happening in the day and that sort of stuff. There, it's shocking and terrible, but you know. But then the flip side, there are some presenters that will have their show completely. I just can't work to a script. There will people have a script that will be done. I'll know that there'll be stuff that'll be picking up on tomorrow at some point, and just kind of running the show. The thing is that if you run the show from a training perspective, as I'm sure others would agree with this, if you've got a format to the show, so my show tomorrow night, for example, starts at 8 o'clock. 8:15, my show reveals the inductee into the North Highland Radio Hall of Fame. So there will be a track from someone who will be into the Hall of Fame tomorrow night. There'll be then 3 tracks from them throughout the night. I do at 8:45 Dance Through the Decades, which is songs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties, and right up to date. And then I have a listener jukebox at 9:15, where a listener will have sent in 3 tracks that will be played back to back for them. So my show is formatted in such a way that I know exactly how it's going to run. And then amongst that, you've got weather and news, etc., to all slot in there. So before you know it, the show's over and done with. It's
brilliant. Yeah, it's good. Okay, Keith.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier on about some of your listeners that are coming from far and distant places. What about the presenters? Do they all live in the Inverness area?
I suppose they all live within probably about. I think we've got someone that travels about an hour and a half to come into the studio. So that's a 3-hour round trip they're making to come in and do a 2-hour show. And there's no expenses for presenters, anything like that. It's purely voluntary. So they would overall they're all within the catchment area, but there's a reasonable travel. They're not just 5 minutes, 10 minutes away.
Yeah. Did you say you were moving to Dingwall?
Yeah.
Oh, my only experience with Dingwall is actually taking Trish to the A&E there, which didn't open until 9 o'clock, and she'd been suffering because she'd been bit by one of those midgy things, and all her arm blew up, and ended up having to cut the holiday short and go home. So, but Dingwall A&E, I can say they did look after her in the end. But,
that's good.
That's my only experience of that. Okay, Brian, are you putting anything?
Are you a fully commercial basis radio station? And is that the reason why your licensing fees are about 15 grand a year?
No. We would be 15 grand a year whether we were or whether we weren't. The donations, the advertising. Because we're an internet station, we're not actually covered by Ofcom. So there's no Ofcom rules or guidelines in relation to internet broadcasting. So technically, the whole 9 o'clock watershed, etc., doesn't apply to us. However, as a station, we've decided to apply Ofcom guidelines in preparation for going FM DAB. So everything we do is in line with Ofcom. Slight digression.
Paying licensing fees to at the moment?
We'll be paying licensing fees to PPL, public, the public, what is it? I can't remember what it stands for, PPL, and PRS, the Public Performing Rights Society. So this is where the artists will we will have to declare how many tracks, and it's fairly straightforward for us because we're 24 hours a day. I think they calculate it out something like 12 to 15 tracks per hour will be played times 24 hours, and that's multiplied up across the day. So this is where some stations will say that they're only broadcasting 12 hours or 6 hours or whatever, because that will then bring their costs down. So we're effectively paying the artists for the use of their music. That's what we are. There's certain guidelines that you're not meant to play the same artist 3 times in the 1 hour, or more than 3 times in the 1 hour. So to make it a kind of fair use policy, I suppose. That's where the costs are going. And of course, there's the small costs of the telephone lines and broadband and all these kind of things. But the vast majority of our costs go to the licensing and also purchasing new, because again, we've got a policy. Careful what I say here, but of course it's very easy to get hold of music nowadays online, but we've got a policy of only using bona fide tracks and music on the stations. So, so everything is purchased. So that's where it is. In saying that, the presenters are able to bring in their own tracks, but they must be willing that those tracks are verifiable as having just legitimately, effectively. So that's where we are. There's some, there's all the things with Spotify and YouTube and all these kind of things that you have to be very careful of in your use of, because again, the license fee needs to be paid for that as well. So that's where we are.
I was interested because I built one of the pirate radio stations out here, and I ran it technically for about 18, 20 months or so. But of course, it's a pirate, and we weren't allowed to pay the licensing fees. Neither were we allowed to do anything really, but the people wouldn't accept any money from us, so it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Do you choose your own music then, James, or do you get given music lists?
Yeah, no, all the presenters are able to pick their own music, so you can choose. So if there was a request tomorrow night, and I think that's one of the other issues that a lot of the presenters that are coming from the other commercial stations and moving away and coming back to community radio is one of the commercial stations that operates is that they believe that 80s music is what they would class as old music. So they will not play anything earlier than an 80s track. So if you wanted a 60s or a 50s track, so tomorrow night I'll stick on Andy Williams or something like that, and a nice bit of mixed middle of the road stuff. I wouldn't be allowed to do that on that station because their music is playlisted for them, so it all comes in, and I just got to play it. So
yeah,
the ability.
Come.
The ability to create your own show, your own style show, or occasionally I'll have a theme. A couple of weeks ago, the weather has been so dreadful up here that we decided to have a hot, sunny theme. The irony of it, but so you're able to pick that theme and get the listeners to send in tracks, etc., to do that. But you've got that ability to do it. What you do have to, you've got to slot in the adverts. If people are paying advertising, you've got to slot them in at the right times and make sure that they're coming for you. So, yeah.
Okay. I noticed on the breakfast television this morning, Janice Long was talking about still being in the DJ business, and she was saying that she was actually concentrating on particular music. I can't remember the name of it, but it was music that I've never heard of. So it must, considering she's in her 70s or even 80s, so she's keeping up to date with it all. I mean, no, I'm still with the Beach Boys, I tell you. So.
James, can I just ask, what's the catchment area? What's the population of the catchment area for the show?
Well, the catchment area for internet radio is worldwide, effectively. That's the crazy thing about it. So, I mean, our advertising catchment area is the North Highlands. So, a couple of 100,000 people effectively would be what we would class as our advertising catchment. But as far as internet is concerned, it's really weird because as the messages come into you, the system is set up that it will stamp it where they're coming from, so you get an idea of where that server is coming from, and it'll come in and it'll say things like Tasmania or not Nigeria. Where was the one that came in the other week there? It was somewhere in Africa came in, and you think, why are these people tuned in? And then you'll find out that we do a lot of our advertising through social media. So social media is then shared, and someone might just decide, oh, well, I know someone in Scotland or I know someone in the Highlands, and they'll tune in. So it's a really strange one. And the fact that I think I've got about 3 regular listeners in the States, one in Texas, one in Georgia, and one in Florida, and they'll tune in. And the really nice thing about it is they'll actually email you to say that they've tuned in. We're here. It's as if, hi, we're with you tonight again, and you just give them that little shout out and little mention and that sort of stuff, and it's all good. So yeah, so the catchment's effectively anywhere and everywhere.
Okay, good. Okay, if one final question, anybody, or are we more or less there? So, okay, if I could ask Andy then, if you could actually just do the vote of thanks for us, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Well, James, I think that was. I think you can tell by the amount of questions you've got tonight how that engaged everybody. I think you've, certainly from my point of view, you've introduced us to a new topic in a way that was really interesting and informative, but also kind of engaging, with, of course, the unashamed plugs for your own show. Which is very cleverly done, but it didn't go completely unnoticed. Brilliant, really enjoyed it. Great stuff, and glad to have you on board, and really grateful that you've done that for us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.